Hello, my name is Zach Gibbs, and I'm a content developer within education services inside Juniper Networks. And today we will be going over the Configuring Site-to-Site IPsec VPNs with J-Web Learning Byte. So what do IPsec VPNs provide? Well, they provide security, or rather secure tunnels across an unsecure network, such as the internet. These tunnels are going to provide encryption, payload verification, and authentication. All right, so let's go ahead and jump to our example. Here in the example, we have a user and a server, and we have vSRX1 and vSRX2. Now, the user and the server need to be able to communicate securely across the internet, and we're going to do that by configuring a site-to-site VPN between vSRX1 and vSRX2. And that site-to-site VPN is going to use basically any phase 1 or phase 2 proposal. We'll just select one when we configure it. And the tunnel should establish as soon as it's configured. We shouldn't have to wait for traffic that needs to traverse the tunnel or the IPsec VPN to establish the actual tunnels themselves. And then we need to ensure that there's bidirectional communication between the user and the server. So let's have a look at the user and the server to show that communication can't happen right now. All right, here is the user, and I'm going to attempt to ping the server. And as you can see, the pings are just going to time out, or the ping traffic is timing out. So no communication there. And here is the server. We can see there is no communication with the user. So let's go ahead and jump to JWeb and configure an IPsec VPN. Okay, so here is the JWeb interface for vSRX1, and we need to go to, first of all, we're in the configure workspace, and we can see that by hovering over the blue ribbon on the left. And so we need to first go to security and IPsec VPNs, and we have a few different options. We have some global settings that we can configure. We don't need that for this example. And then we need to configure some IKE phase 1 settings. And so first we need to configure an IKE policy. We can click the Create button, and we need to name it. We'll call this, just call it IKE Pol. Set this the mode to main mode. We'll select a predefined proposal. We could select a user-defined proposal and create one or use one, but we're going to select a predefined proposal. Basic works for this scenario, the basic predefined proposal that is. And then under IKE policy options, we're going to set the pre-shared key to Juniper. If I could type, there we go, Juniper, click OK, and that is going to create the IKE policy. And now we need to select Gateway, the Gateway tab, and create a new gateway by clicking the Create button. And then we need to first name it. We'll call this IKE Gate. Then we need to select a policy, IKE policy, and we need to select an external interface. And here we'll be selecting the GIGI003 interface, and then we need to select either site-to-site VPN or remote access VPN. And here we're doing a site-to-site VPN, not a remote access VPN, so the default option of site-to-site VPN works great. And we need to enter the peer ID, and that's going to be 10.12.12.2. Add that by clicking the plus button, and then we could select the IKE version, but it's unnecessary. We can just leave that as default. And I believe it uses version 1 by default. Click OK. And then we need to select IKE phase 2 on the left. And then we need to select the IPsec policy tab. And we need to create a new IPsec policy. We can name this IPsec Pol for short. We can select predefined, and we can select any of these as long as it's the same on both sides. As far as the predefined proposals, we can select basic. That works great for our example. Click OK, and then select the VPN tab and click the new button, and then we can name the VPN. We'll call this VPN to vSRX-2. Remote gateway. Select IKE Gates. That's the gateway, the IKE gateway we configured earlier. Then IPsec policy, and then the bind interface. There's no ST interface currently configured, so we need to add an interface. Specify the logical unit number for the ST0 interface we want to use. We're just going to specify unit 0. That works fine. And then we need to specify which zone to place this in. And we're just going to place this in the internet zone. That's the external, or rather the untrust zone. And then it's best practice. You can leave this as unnumbered, but it's best practice to change this to numbered and enter an IP address. And we can specify the subnet mask, that works fine. And we do have some options under here. We can specify an IPv6 address if necessary. We don't need that for right now. We can also specify some secure tunnel interface configuration options. Under multipoint, if we were to select, if we needed to create like a hub and spoke VPN, we could select the ST interface configuration option and leave it at the automatic, which would specify the next hop tunnel address information automatically, or we could change it to manual and put that stuff in manually. But we don't need that, so we're just going to leave that unchecked. And then we can specify some routing protocols, which routing protocols to enable, and that would allow certain routing protocols under the ST0 interface under the specific security zone. So keep in mind that's what that tab is for. And so we don't need to specify that. We're just going to use static routing. So click OK and we're good there. And we want to set established tunnels to immediately. The default will be on traffic, so keep that in mind. We can specify on traffic, which is the default anyway, but we want these tunnels to come up immediately. That's part of the criteria of the example we went over. So select immediately. We don't need to disable anti-replay. We do have the IPsec VPN options, which allows us to enable VPN monitoring, proxy identity, traffic selectors, things like that. Do not fragment. And so, we can set the do not fragment bit, but we don't need that for our case study. So we can just select OK now. Then the next thing we need to configure is the static routing to send traffic into that tunnel that is destined to the server that is connected to VSRX2. Now, one other thing I do want to bring up is that you might need to configure a firewall policy. We're not going to do that. I do have just the default policy set to permit all. Keep that in mind. We're not going to focus on creating a policy here just for the sake of time. And so we'll go ahead and skip to creating that static route. And that's going to be under network and then static routing, and then click the create button. And we're going to specify a static route. And this is going to be a route to the server. We're just going to specify a /24 address. And then we need to add in a next hop and select interface name and select ST0. And then lastly, we need to commit the configuration. And so that's committing. So let's go ahead and jump to VSRX2 and basically mirror the configuration on VSRX2. Okay, so here is VSRX2. We'll need to go under security. Keep in mind we're under the configure workspace and IPsec VPN. IKE phase 1, and I'm going to run through this quickly because this is basically just a repeat of what we did on the other side, just kind of a mirror of what we did. So select the IKE policy. We need to create a new one. We'll just call this IKE pol. Set the mode to main mode. Predefined basic works for the predefined proposal. IKE policy, you need to set, IKE policy options tab. Need to select set the pre-shared key. We're going to set that to Juniper. Click OK. And then we need to select the gateway tab. We need to add a new gateway. We're going to call this IKE gate. Select the policy we created. External interface. We need to select this to GIGI2. That's the interface that points towards the internet in this scenario. And then site-to-site VPN selected by default. That's great. The remote peer's IP address is 10.11.11.1. We need to add that and then click OK. Okay, so we need to go to the IPsec phase 2 workspace. And then we need to create an IPsec policy. We need to create the policy itself. We need to select predefined. We're going to select basic to match the other side. Click OK. Then select the VPN tab. Create a new VPN. Call this VPN to VSRX1. Select IKE gateway for the gateway, IPsec pol for the policy. Of course, there's no tunnel interface just yet. We need to create one. Set logical unit to 0. Set the zone to internet. And we're going to select numbered. Going to set the IP address, something within the same range that we set on the other side. And then click OK. And then establish tunnels immediately. Click OK. Then we need to go to network workspace and select static routing. We need to say which traffic we want to send into the tunnel. And this is going to be the user, the subnet associated with the user, select the interface of ST0, and then we'll commit that configuration. All right, so let's go ahead and jump to the user and see if that communication is occurring. Okay, so here is the user. Let's attempt to ping the server, and perfect, that's what we want to see. We can communicate with the server. Now let's jump to the server and take a look there. And this is a good sign too. I just left that ping running with the server, and we can see now that there is communication between the server and the user. So let's jump back to the J-Web GUI and look at some statistics that relate to IPsec. All right, so here is the JWeb interface for vSRX1. We want to go to the monitor workspace on the left, and then we want to go to IPsec VPN, and we can go to phase 1. We can look at the phase 1 security associations, and this information will refresh by default every 30 seconds. You can change that. You can also clear the IKE security association by clicking the Clear IKE SA button on the top right side there. And then, so great, we see the security associations, they're up. That's what we want to see. Okay, so now we can go to the phase 2 workspace under IPsec VPNs, and we can see first it's going to show us the statistics, and that's perfect. That's what we want to start with. We can see some bar graphs of input, output bytes. We can change that to view the packets, and we can see we have packets in, packets out. And on the right-hand side, we can see that we have encrypted packets, decrypted packets, as far as encrypted bytes, things like that. So this is working perfectly. This is what we want to see. And finally, we have the IPsec SA tab, and we can see the security associations here, and we can see that they're up and established. So this is perfect. This is working as intended. So that brings us to the end of this learning byte. We discussed site-to-site IPsec VPNs, and we demonstrated how to configure site-to-site IPsec VPNs using J-Web. So as always, thanks for watching.
Visit the Juniper Education Services website to learn more about courses. View our full range of classroom, online, and e-learning courses. Learning paths, industry segment and technology-specific training paths. Juniper Network's certification program, the ultimate demonstration of your competence. And the training community, from forums to social media. Join the discussion.